Okay, we're back again for another week of movie reviews and or movie discussions, whatever you want to call it. I believe we're at episode 15 now, so we've been doing this for a little while and still going strong, it seems. With you as always is me, Chucky, from the forums, and we've also got Jigsaw.
How are you doing this week?
I'm very good. Who was that? Anyways, 5 more movies, you can take it away.
Indeed. As always, we have a somewhat interesting lineup this week. We are starting off with the 1978 Mardi Gras Massacre. Following that, we have the Spanish movie, The Orphanage. Then we have a thriller / maybe crime type movie titled Passion from 2012, directed by Brian De Palma. Then we have the horror comedy Triloquist from 2008. And we will finish off the night with the classic Friday the 13th Part 2 from 1981.
Such a classic.
I'm assuming that's sarcasm, but we will get into that in about an hour and a half. So.
Let's get things started off with Mardi Gras Massacre from 1978. So essentially this movie is about this somewhat wealthy-looking guy who's going around from bar to bar, taking hookers back to his apartment and performing these ritual-type sacrifices with them. And it's all happening during Mardi Gras, as per the title of the movie, even though it doesn't really have all that much to do with Mardi Gras outside of one scene late in the movie. Now, this is one of those movies that I think is widely considered a pretty poor movie. However, I think, at least for me, it's one of those movies that's kind of just so bad it's good. Like, there's a lot of stupid things that happen in this movie. And I guess I have the benefit of having watched an interview with the guy that plays the killer in this movie, William Mezzo, and he's talked a lot about what happened in this movie or the production of the movie, and it's pretty interesting because I believe the director, who, just off the top of my head, I think it was Jack Weiss, apparently he's just tried to throw in a lot of different things that were popular at the time, hoping, just throwing all these different things in, thinking, it's got all these things that people like, therefore it's going to be a very good movie, or at least a very entertaining movie. So, disco was popular at the time, throw some of that in. Obviously, a lot of people like to see nudity, throw that in. People like to see gore, throw that in. People like to see car chases, throw a car chase scene in there for no good reason. Yeah, so it's one of those movies that's got so many problems, but I don't know, just something about that, it just became really entertaining to me. They always play this funky music every time he's trying to sacrifice one of these women that he takes home. The music in this movie, it's top notch. At least for me.
So just to give a little background, I've known about this movie for many years now. For a long time it's been on my... I have a list of horror movies I want to see, and this has been on that list for at least 5-6 years. And I've heard that it's not a particularly great movie, multiple times from multiple people. And seeing it, I can attest that it's not a great movie. Which isn't to say you can't get some enjoyment from it. I think Chuck is right. If you're watching this, there are definitely some things that you can sort of have a good time with. But for a lot of the movie, more than anything else, I was just bored out of my mind. And I know I was reminded of bad movies like Blood Feast by H.G. Lewis, from '63, which has quite a similar plot to this one. And honestly, even though it came out 15 years earlier, I think it's decently about the movie. And I don't mind some of the stuff in this movie. I don't mind the budget. As much as I make fun of it, I'm going to make fun of it. I don't really mind the soundtrack. I get it. Disco is popular and, it makes sense. But even so, with all of that aside, I thought there's just not much excitement going on in this movie. it just felt repetitive, and it just felt, in many ways, uninspired, in my opinion. The one shining light, if there is a shining light, would probably be that the goal for what it is it's decent. They knew what they were going for, and I think they did okay. And the guy who plays the killer, it's just so ridiculous that I know he's an interesting guy. I sort of enjoy his dialogue. I was looking for the evil women. So I know that guy was certainly interesting. Despite that, this isn't really one that I would recommend. That said, I would let Chucky talk about maybe why you should see it.
Well, I think first and foremost, like we were saying, the guy that played, or the main character, the killer in the movie, played by William Metzo, I think he's I don't know, he's got a really good screen presence for someone who I think has only been in one movie, this movie. He might have been in one other movie, I'm not sure, but yeah, I don't think he's really been in anything else. And whether you're looking too closely or dissecting his performance, I think there's times throughout the movie where just very subtle, simple things that he does. And one thing I can point out, if you look on our YouTube channel, search for Mardi Gras Massacre, I have uploaded a scene a little while back, one of the opening scenes to the movie. And kind of just right at the end of that scene, you can see his face switch as soon as the woman gets up and walks away. He's kind of got this smile, then it kind of turns into this, well, pretty much the opposite, but you don't even really notice it because of the shot, I guess. It's not a movie that's particularly shot well, and I can go into that a little more later as well, because I know a few things what were happening there. But no, I thought his performance was, I would say, underrated, or at least his screen presence is underrated. Like, no one really talks about him or this performance here.
I would probably say that he fits more into this movie than most other people did.
Yeah. And, well, the funny thing is, I don't even think he auditioned for the movie. It's just some guy knew him and said, hey, you play this killer in this movie, and it's like, okay. So he didn't really have to, like, compete against other people. I don't think there was a auditioning process at all. And like I was saying, with the production issues and everything, apparently the director, as he was filming this movie, he just kept running out of film, so they would just film small bits and pieces, and then eventually I'd have to go buy more film when he had more money to do so. And so he planned on doing a lot more close-up shots, which actually never happened. And you can tell, if you actually go back and watch certain scenes, you can actually tell that there's some scenes where they've got close-ups, and then a whole bunch of other scenes where they don't, or they've got very minimal different shots from the scenes. And I don't know, that's probably another reason why the movie's kind of, like I said, maybe some people kind of bore you out of your mind, partially because they're not doing a whole lot in that area as well.
Well, I think another issue this movie had, that aside from the killer, there wasn't really that much in the way of engaging characters. I mean, one of the main protagonists, I would argue he's one of the main protagonists, is the cop, whose name I forget. But, I mean, that guy was just, like, throughout the whole movie, he is a decently dislikable character. Oh, I mean, one of my favorite parts is when he's sort of dating this prostitute, and then he just goes off on her, like, a week later, he slaps her around a few times, and it just, like, goes off on her. And then he apologizes, and of course at the end they get back together and talk about it. That's maybe a bit too misogynistic 70s for me.
Well, just speaking of that particular scene, and that's another example of, the issues with the movie in terms of how it was filmed, but you could see, even in that scene, there's a moment where she stands up, and then a second later, she's back sitting down on the bed, and then a few seconds later, suddenly she's standing up again, and that cop, he actually disappears, like, just from the movie in, like, the last, 10, 15 minutes. And I'm assuming they ran out of film to film any more scenes with him. Because he was the main guy chasing the killer, and he just randomly disappears, and basically his partner takes over the rest of the movie.
Although I will say I've never seen such an uninteresting investigation before in my life. Like that's such a bad investigation. I mean, this thing. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but this is where I thought the movie was going to go. I thought that once that one girl was killed and they found the body, they would have done an autopsy and found the Chinese food in her stomach. Then I thought, hey, they're going to go to the Chinese place and then they're going to find out about the killer. Now, they do go to the Chinese place, but it's just this random, hey, have you seen this ring? Like, I feel like I could have done a better investigation than those guys did.
Yeah, well, that's a part of its charm for me. Just... yeah, it's pretty silly, and when I was saying before, like it's for me, it's in that so bad it's good type category, and there's other movies from kind of back in the 70s or 80s where you could say that it's not quite as it's not funny, or in most people's cases probably not entertaining enough to laugh at, but for me, I don't know, I just found a lot of it entertaining, whether it was funny moments and just all the silly production issues that are glaringly obviously pointing out at you on the screen.
There was one scene that this was somewhat toward the end of the movie, in which I think it's the main cop is talking to the former vice lead detective, and he's saying, hey, I can help you find your the girlfriend you broke up with. I can help you find her, but you've got to be about the individual to her. And while he's having this really personal conversation with him, the detective's partner is just sitting off to the side, listening to everything. And it has to be one of the most awkward. He really shouldn't be there for that. So I don't know, that scene sort of cracked me up when that came on.
Well, hey, I mean, you get to see some tits in the movie.
that is true. There's a somewhat impressive amount of nudity in this movie that I didn't necessarily expect. Plus, there's a pretty good character called The Fish.
Just in that interview with the guy that played the killer, he was talking about how one of the women, and I guess back in the day where boob jobs is like more of a new thing, and he was talking about how one of them, their tits are like solidified and they're rock hard, and he's talking about a scene where he's like rubbing oil all over them, and I don't know, just
well,
funny.
I mean, those massages were pretty erotic stuff, so
I envied him. Yeah, but this is I didn't expect a whole lot out of the movie, and just it has a charm for me with its music and all of its goofs throughout the movie, all of its unintentional goofs, and it's trying pretty hard to be something, and it ends up just being ridiculous in so many ways. And the killer himself, he's just so charismatic to me. I'm so surprised that he hasn't been in anything else. I love his voice, love a lot of his facial expressions, and I just really enjoyed the movie. And I've seen it a couple times now, and I enjoy it every single time. But I do watch it on Blu-ray, so the best quality out there. I have a feeling if I had tried watching this on like a VHS quality or a poor DVD type release, I could see myself potentially being bored by it, because I'm not picking up on some of these all the small details with, like I said, facial expressions and stuff. I enjoyed it, so I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
That is quite an impressive rating. It's a movie I wish I liked more than I do. I mean, because the name of the movie is Mardi Gras Massacre. How can you not like that name? But I find the movie more than anything else somewhat tedious. I appreciated. I mean, I guess I appreciated the nudity, but I appreciated the gore also. I mean, it's pretty, like I said, it's repetitive, but I mean, it's it's decently going movie at times, so I enjoyed it. But overall, I just found the movie sort of too boring to really be a so bad it's good type thing. So I mean, I'm going to give this one a low rating, but I could probably see myself watching it sometime in the future, but it's definitely a below average movie, and I'll probably give this one a 5 out of 10.
You're gonna get such a beating.
I know, I'm used to it. That's not the only time tonight I'm going to get a beating, but
just one other thing with those gory scenes where he's taking out body parts, and that's another thing. The parts he's taking out, they look quite large. Like they're from a cow or something, probably, but they look twice the size as they probably should for a human. So just another small thing where it's a little over the top and somewhat entertaining.
Well, now for a completely different type of movie. It's amazing, on a side note, just how wide the horror genre is. When on one side you can fit in Mardi Gras Massacre, and next you can fit in The Orphanage. It's beautiful. Next we come to a Spanish movie titled The Orphanage, in which a woman brings her family back to her childhood home, which used to be an orphanage for children. Not particularly a large amount of children, but it used to be an orphanage. And she wants to sort of make it a home for children again. Unfortunately, her son has some invisible friends who may not be quite as harmless as you expect. So things happen throughout the movie. The son goes missing, and she's frantically searching for her son, while many, including her husband, are sort of giving up hope that he's even alive. So it's a very interesting movie. It's a lot more emotional than you might expect. It's sort of a heavy reliance on drama over horror, but there's still a decent amount of horror in the movie. Some might argue parts are anticlimactic, but I think the movie's, I sort of like what it's going for. And I think a lot of what the movie does is, not necessarily amazing, but I think it gets the job done. But what were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I remember seeing this in theaters, and I did eventually get the Blu-ray as well. And I think I liked it a bit more back then than I do this second time around, or second or third time around that I've seen, because I watched it this past week. It's a movie where, I don't know if this is just like a Spanish thing or not, but it feels like Del Toro's got his fingerprints all over this movie. Like, it very much feels like very similar to his type of style, I guess. And even though he didn't direct it, it just
he was a producer though. So.
Yeah. So yeah, it definitely feels like it's got a lot of his influence in it. I like the story idea. I think the story itself is pretty decent, but I do find that there's a number of things that prevent me from really enjoying the movie, and a part of that is I think it's a fairly slow movie. It moves quite slow. I think there's some good scenes in the movie, like a few scenes that you can pluck out where you go, I wouldn't mind seeing that moment again. But yeah, and I don't know if it's also partially that I think it's tougher for me to enjoy movies that are in other languages, because, I have to spend more time reading. As you know, I don't read books, and now I have to read my movies. But, I mean, that doesn't heavily influence the experience, but
I was just going to say, it's really funny that you take that position, because I'm the type of guy who, like, I 100% prefer subtitled over dubbed. Like, if a movie's dubbed, I'm going to, after the bat, I'm going to give it a lower rating almost automatically. So I just think the juxtaposition is so funny.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't really have a huge preference over dubbed or reading subtitles for foreign films, but yeah, I definitely prefer to not have to read subtitles. And I think with movies in other languages, it's harder to interpret how well someone's acting and things like that. Yeah, there's just something about it that just makes it a little tougher for me.
Was there many people in the movie you thought, did they act that well?
Well, no, not... Well, see, that's the thing. I can't really say anyone put in a great performance or a poor performance. I just can't hear that in their... I mean, I can kind of hear it in the voice, but I can't fully understand it. I don't know. That's just something for me. But like I was saying, there are a couple of scenes or a couple of moments during the movie that I enjoyed. You know, like the old lady just bumbling around their place in the shed, and the scene with the kid with the bag on his head. You know, the scene where he's in the house. But I think I started kind of losing interest. I think the last best scene in the movie was that car accident scene. It stands out, that scene. And then after that moment, there didn't seem to be a whole lot of other moments that I really enjoyed, at least until towards the end.
None of that paranormal examination stuff did anything for you?
No. No, I thought that was the weakest part of the movie, to be honest.
Yeah, it's my issue with that, and I thought the characters involved were fine, but I mean, you see that all the time in paranormal movies. You know, just hey, let's get a psychic woman, and it's always an old psychic woman. Like I've never seen one with just a young guy, but so I don't know it. I've seen it in so many other movies, and I thought like I said, the characters do fine, but I mean we've been down that road before. We know how it goes, and ultimately, what does it really change? Not a whole lot, in my opinion.
And fuck that little kid. He was so annoying. Well, there's much more annoying kids in other horror movies, but I really wanted to give him a smack upside the head.
What about the kid that you not like?
I don't know, just he's getting out of line in a few scenes, I thought.
I have nothing, I guess I have less against kids than you do. One thing I did like about this movie, which I don't think it was used necessarily to as great in the fact as it could have been, but I really like the location. It's like a seaside orphanage, and there's a lighthouse. There's never I was hoping for like a climatic scene in the lighthouse, but it never happened. But I really like the location. There's a pretty interesting beach area, and they didn't do as much with it as they could have. But as far as settings go, I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I thought the location was good. There's a good location and style to the film. It just drags a bit too much for me, I think. It just, like I said, it's got good moments. It just doesn't have that consistency throughout to keep me entertained from start to finish.
And out of interest, without spoiling anything, what did you think about the ending of the movie? Positive, negative?
Well, yeah, I thought the ending was decent. I've got no problems with that. I enjoyed that enough. I mean, that at least that steered the movie back on course in terms of my enjoyment. Because, like I said, between that and that car accident scene, there wasn't a whole lot that I was really enamored with, I guess.
So this is a movie I've only seen once before. I probably enjoyed it more this time around, if only because when I last saw it as like a teenager, and like many teenagers, I could pay attention to a foreign film if you paid me. So I enjoyed it more this time around. I thought there was some pretty strong emotional impact, especially toward the ending. But even throughout the movie, the main woman, whose name is Belén Ruda, and I'm assuming I butchered that because I don't know an ounce of Spanish. I thought she did a really good job. I thought her character was appropriately sympathetic, and I really enjoyed her performance. When the movie goes for the more horror territory, I think it does a pretty good job. But even when it's more like a mystery, when she's trying to figure out, hey, where did my son go? I think it was. I sort of enjoy those engaging mysteries, and I enjoyed it. So I'm going to rate this one a bit above average. I don't think it's amazing, but I still think if you enjoy foreign horror movies and you haven't seen this one, it's probably something you may want to look into. So I'm going to give this a 7.5, and after some difficult deliberation, I'm probably going to round it up to an 8, because I don't know if it's quite that good, but it's a pretty decent movie, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I think I'm going to go. I kind of struggle between a 6 and a 7, but I think I'm going to stick with a 6. Just like I said, there's a lot of moments. There's a few good moments in the movie, but there's also a lot of, I wouldn't say dull moments, but it just moves so slow at times where I'm just kind of wanting something exciting to happen or something to really catch my attention. And I didn't, like I said, it just wasn't consistently throughout the movie captivating me. So, yeah, I think a 6 for now is fine for me. Who knows, next time I watch it I might enjoy it a little more, because I'm pretty sure I enjoyed it a little more the first time I watched it. So maybe sometimes, your mood at the time, that can play into how well you're enjoying a movie. If you watch a movie at the right time, you're going to enjoy it maybe, and sometimes if you watch it at the wrong time, you don't enjoy it. So next up we've got the 2012 movie by Brian De Palma, Passion, which is an erotically charged thriller, which is supposedly a remake of a French film from a couple years prior called Love Crime, I believe, or from what I've read, which is kind of funny because this is still somewhat a French production, I think also German, but it seems we've almost reached the next stage of evolution with countries remaking their own movies only a year or two later. You've got to love that. Anyways, I've heard this has a very different ending, so I don't know how insistent they are on counting this as an actual remake, but there you go. Anywho, it pretty much focuses on these two business women, one who's the boss of this firm or company, whatever you want to call it, and the other who is her subordinate. They have some catty backstabbing happen between the two, and eventually it leads to some murder and mystery as the film progresses. I don't think there's really much else to say about the story. There's a few twists and turns they try and throw in. It's a Brian De Palma movie. You can kind of, if you've seen some of his other stuff, you're definitely going to see a lot of the same stuff in this movie. And it's kind of I guess you could call it a bit of a throwback to a lot of the movies he was doing, I believe, from, 30 years prior. There was Dress to Kill, Body Double, even Blowout. Yeah, there's some of the movies that he did back then that, and I actually enjoy those movies quite a lot. And so Brian De Palma is actually one of those directors. Now, I don't really have favorite directors, but if I had to choose someone to list, his name may come up. I tend to enjoy his style of filmmaking. I mean, Carrie is one of my all-time favorite movies. I know it's not yours, so, and I'm expecting you to not have good things to say, but no, I enjoy his style. I don't think this is one of his stronger movies, but yeah, it's still got something for me and fans of his work, I think.
Out of interest, is that why you came to this movie? You said that he directed it and then you just watched it?
The funny thing is, no. I actually saw this back in the days where we still had video rental stores, which, this is only, 2012, so I actually still had a video rental store nearby at the time this was a new release. And I was just looking for anything to watch, really, that looked interesting, and it looked like it was a thriller or a horror or something. It was kind of hard to tell, but just looking at the cover and the back of the cover, but I ended up picking it up, and to be honest, I didn't even pay attention to the opening credits when I first watched the movie, so I didn't even see that it had Brian De Palma come up. So I had actually watched the whole thing without knowing he had directed it, just because I wasn't paying attention to the opening credits or even the ending credits. And then the second time, or when I was looking it up, then I knew it for the second time I watched it.
So maybe it's because I don't have much experience with thrillers. I've not seen all that many, to be honest. And this is going to sound like disparaging toward the genre, but I mean, thrillers are basically horror movies that were too weak to actually be horror. So they just toned everything down, and I don't know, as someone who focuses mainly on horror, and there are a lot of non-horror movies I love, but as someone who focuses mainly on horror, watching thrillers is sometimes a bit, it's a bit difficult. This movie, to me, it literally seemed like I was watching a low-budget Lifetime production. Like, throughout the whole movie, it's like, hey, was this just one of those Lifetime movies? And, like, the story was okay. It was fine. But I just didn't see what the big deal was. I mean, it's okay if you're into this type of movie. You know, the mystery was interesting. I thought the ending was a bit of a mess, to be honest. I thought, actually, to be honest, I thought the ending was somewhat horrible. But you know, before that, I thought the movie was decent. I liked the mystery. I liked, you know, the toward the end when more things I discovered. I was okay with that. But I mean, from the unlikable characters, and talk about a movie with a bunch of unlikable characters, to the I mean, I was hoping. Well, I was sort of thinking what I was getting into, and I was hoping it would be a bit more than what I thought. But I mean, it's okay for the type of movie it is, but it's not really my type of thing. And I suspect before anybody goes out of the way to say, "Oh, hey, you know, I just don't know thrillers," and that's true. It's not my preferred genre, but it just didn't feel like a great movie. It felt like it was okay, but I don't see, even with Brian De Palma directing it, I don't see this as a particularly amazing movie. And to be honest, I just have a hard time imagining many people would see this as an amazing movie, despite some interesting, a few interesting scenes. I just don't see it.
Well, I think when you're talking about comparing thrillers and horrors, how how you see thrillers as basically weak horror movies, I think there's a lot of horror movies that actually, well, a lot of movies that are actually thrillers that the horror genre claims to be theirs.
And actually, if I may say one quick thing, I'm talking more about modern day thrillers. One of my favorite movies, and this is a movie you may or may not have seen, I really don't know. It's a 1962 movie called Cape Fear. It's a fantastic, and it's remade in the 90s. I've not seen the remake, but the original movie I thought was such a fantastic movie, and obviously it's a thriller, and I really enjoyed it. So it's more like the whole like Lifetime epidemic that you see. You know, pretty much every Lifetime movie they put up, and I've seen a few, and they're pretty much all the same type of thing, and that's a vibe I got from this. So I guess that's where I was coming from with that.
You know, just speaking about the movie itself, it is a movie that I think takes a little while to get going. It's a bit sluggish, especially in maybe the first hour. If you're enjoying some of the bickering between the two back and forth, then you know, it's okay. But nothing too dramatic happens until, well, there is one or two small things that happen maybe 30-40 minutes into the movie, but the real big events that start happening in the movie, or the most dramatic events in the movie, start happening about an hour or so in. And I think this is roughly about an hour and 40-minute movie, so it's not too long. And like I said, the ending is a bit, you could say it's a bit messy, or it's a bit confusing, or depending on what you take from it. But I enjoy the over the top suspenseful nature of it. You know, the music playing in the background, and it's almost like it's trying to be more thrilling than it probably is. But yeah, I don't know. I guess that's, you know, De Palma's style as well, and at least a part that I enjoyed from the movie.
You know, one thing that struck me as amusing, I'm not sure if this is something you noticed, but I like how pretty much every other woman's a lesbian or bisexual in this. It just, I don't know, I was sort of amused by that. Because, like, the main characters, the two women, I mean, to me it's pretty obvious they have, you know, or they seem to have something for each other. And then there's, you know, other female characters who are also interested in other women, and I don't know, I don't know, I guess this thing took place in Germany, but I don't know, that just was a bit of a culture shock.
Do enjoy the Germans' movies. Well, the funny thing about that is, my wife always says, you know, she if she ever did go lesbian, she would go lesbian with Noomi Rapace, the brunette
Isabel
in the movie. Yeah. I don't know if, like, even to this day she holds true to that, but she's always said that in the past, so
I can see why.
I mean, it's not necessarily the type of woman I go for, but
Are you more of the Rachel McAdams type guy?
Well, out of the two of them, I would be, but still, I wouldn't exactly say she's my type either, but yeah, out of the two of them, yes.
I guess it's how it's Paul Anderson, so.
Actually, speaking of that, there's two characters in this movie, two different characters who look almost the same.
I think police guy and the
prosecutor. I think it was a prosecutor, and this guy Dirk. They look almost identical. I'm not sure if that's intentional or not.
Yeah, it's funny because when I was watching this movie, and obviously this is a movie I've never seen before. And it's a movie I'm probably never going to see again. But when I was watching this and that guy popped up, the prosecutor, I'm like, hey, is that the same guy? Is this like a plot twist going on? But no, it's a different guy. It just
suddenly he's changed professions. He's gone from embezzler to prosecutor.
I mean, that'd be a good carver.
Yeah, that's one way to get out of a crime. It wasn't me.
You can't be arrested if you don't prosecute yourself.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's probably not how it legally works.
But there's maybe two very small moments in the movie where you actually get to see. I mean, this is by no means anywhere near being called like a slasher or a giallo or anything like that. But I did like the imagery though of some of those moments in the movie with the person wearing the mask and the black gloves and everything. Well, I think it was black gloves. I can't remember now, but they're basically wearing black. Yeah, so just those couple of small moments may do something for someone out there.
That was probably the movie at its highest point. Because this is an issue I sort of mentioned, but seeing these two women go back and forth, I mean, that's not really my idea of entertainment. It's possibly when this is, I think, maybe halfway through the movie-ish, when the blonde woman, the bosses are showing videos at this meeting, and it just shows like the breakdown of the dark-haired woman, and like she keeps, oh, I'm sorry, I can see this really hurts you. Like I can't stand that level of cattiness. It just I hate that type of stuff. And I talk about unlikable and like every sense of the word. Like I don't see why police would even bother investigating this more. Just let it happen.
There's some ballet for you to enjoy along the way.
Well, I did enjoy the split screen. That's obviously a Brian De Palma technique. He uses it quite often, but I did enjoy that. I thought it was sort of fun. And the drunken Paul Anderson, and he sort of comes in and out of hearing what he's saying, and I enjoyed that too. So it's not like the movie's entirely worthless. It's a decent amount of the movie to enjoy. It's just, like I said, not my type of thing.
Yeah, so it's a bit of I'd say it's a little bit of a messy movie, but for me, it's still got that Brian De Palma style, and I typically enjoy a lot of erotic thrillers. I don't know, I don't mind seeing a titty or two when I watch my movies, and yeah, no, I didn't mind it. I think it was decent, and it's got its moments, and I can certainly see how if you're not really attracted to De Palma's style of filmmaking or thrillers in general, you're probably not going to have much enjoyment with this one. But for me, I enjoyed it enough. I'm going to give it a 7.
Yeah, and I'll keep this short because I pretty much said everything I wanted to. I just couldn't get past the fact that to me, this really felt like a Lifetime movie. Like, the music, I mean, the opera was fine, but like, there's a lot of music near the beginning that just felt like upbeat and like whimsical, and I did get it. I don't know if I'm assuming it was intentional because we're talking about a pretty highly decorated director. But I didn't care for it. The movie was entertaining at times, but I'm going to give this one a below average rating of a 5 out of 10.
You're a Brian De Palma hater.
Well, off the top of my head, I can't think of how many of his movies I've seen. I'm suspecting you've seen quite a bit more than I have. So I mean, it's possible.
I remember one time someone asked a question: which director had the best 5 consecutive movies in a row that they've directed?
Huh.
Like, if it wasn't for Home Movies, which is a movie that De Palma directed, when was it? Maybe late 70s. If it wasn't for that movie, he would have had, what was it? Carrie, The Fury, Dressed to Kill.
Looks like Blowout and Scarface
Yeah, Blowout, Scarface.
and Body Double.
And even Body Double, if you wanted to throw that in. He had a really good run of movies, I think, at that time.
Now that you mention it, and I actually forgot about this movie, but you reminded me. The Fury is a movie I hated also. So maybe I do
See?
have.
Yeah.
I mean, now I've not seen that one in years, and I've only seen it once. So it's very possible when I see it again, it might be okay. And in our fairness, he did direct The Untouchables, and I enjoyed that in Untouchables. So he's okay.
So next up, we've got Triloquist from 2008. It's about a drug-addicted ventriloquist who dies. Well, it's not about them, but she dies and leaves his 2 children, one named Angelina, the other named Norbert, and they've also got this puppet called Dummy, and they bounce from foster homes and then eventually, I think, live with their uncle, who seems to molest Angelina, and they kill his ass and go live on the streets and do a bunch of killing and silly stuff. And yeah, it's not really the most ingenious script ever written, but then again, I guess you could say that about most movies. But the funny thing is, I actually got sent this movie from the studio back in, 2008. I remember this is one of the movies that they sent to me, and it's probably, not that it had a lot of marketing to it. From what I can recall, it's certainly not a very popular movie, but I guess it was kind of mismarketed, or they were playing up that it's a killer doll movie, or it's from the guy who directed Leprechaun. So you're thinking things like Chucky and Leprechaun as you're trying to watch this movie, and it's so far from either of the two. It's definitely far from anything you'd see in a Chucky movie, and so going in with that expectation, I certainly didn't enjoy it the first time I watched it. But I have watched it probably at least 3 or 4 times now since it came out, and I would say that I've slightly enjoyed it a little bit more every single time I watch it. I think as a whole, it's not a good movie. Certainly not necessarily a good movie, but I tend to enjoy it a lot in pieces. Like, it's a movie where I'll go back and I'll watch 5-10 minutes of it, random different parts of the movie, and I'll watch it like that. It's something that's growing on me a bit the more and more I watch it.
Yeah, this I'm trying to find out the best way to begin this. I had a thoroughly unenjoyable time with this. Like, a few weeks back, maybe it was a month ago or so, we reviewed Cherokee Creek, and that movie, well, I thought you liked it, I think, a little more than I did. I thought it was really terrible.
I would say you liked it a whole lot less than I disliked it.
Yeah, that's probably true. And this movie reminded me of that one in that I struggled to get through it. See, this is part of the problem. The beginning, when it's narrated by the dummy, which I hated, but that's not really the point. It reminded me of Seed of Chucky in a few ways, and if anybody's read my review, I hated Seed of Chucky, and I actually thought this movie was worse. So I had a difficult time with this. There was one line that I thought was funny at the beginning, the trick or treat line. I thought that was pretty funny, but pretty much everything else, I was just like cringing, and it's not my type of humor. And what's her name? Payden Lopachin. That may be a mispronunciation, but she's the main female actress in this movie. I just every time every scene she was in, which was most of them, she reminded me of Sherry Moon Zombie's baby Firefly. Only it seems like she was so much worse.
Oh, she wasn't that annoying.
Oh yes, she was. But that may just be an agree to disagree type thing.
Well, just before we move on from that, with Sherry Moon Zombie, I actually don't mind her overall in like other movies, but in that particular series, she's always like, which is really annoying.
I actually think this individual is so much worse, but and maybe it's because in House of a Thousand Corpses and Dallas Rejects, she has other family members around her, so she herself might be terrible, but at least you have other people like Otis. In this one, it's just herself and a brother who never talks and she gets it on with. And I don't know, and I don't think that's spoilers, but spoiler in case.
Oh my god, you spoiled the movie.
Yeah, Triloquist, which, speaking of it, why doesn't she just say ventriloquist? Why is it Triloquist? I don't know, it just, that's a small thing, but that also bothered me.
I think maybe that was her distinction between a normal ventriloquist and this supposed magic
yeah.
ventriloquist. I don't know, maybe.
It's possible, and if so, then I hate her even more. I know, I appreciate, it's funny because I actually have a friend from another horror website I speak to, and I was mentioning that I was watching this, and he actually enjoys this movie. He gave it an 8 out of 10. And I forget what how high your rating goes, but he really enjoyed this one, and it just blew my mind because I'm wondering if like I'm alone in this. But I thought this was horrible. This is probably one of the worst movies I've seen in the last like 5 years of my life. So I don't know. Before I get any more into it, speak about why it's the best movie ever made.
You're probably not alone because I think the IMDb rating's like 4 out of 10 or something like that. So it's certainly a lower rated movie. But one area of this movie where I think it actually not necessarily shines, but stood out to me is its soundtrack. Now it's got a really unusual collection of songs. I mean, if you listen to them all on their own, they don't really go all that well together. But it's just something that I noticed throughout the movie, and there are a couple of songs that I really enjoyed in the movie. There's one towards the end of the movie called "Alone" by Kerry Jo Hubrick, which is a good song. In fact, if anyone out there has that song, send it to me, because right now on YouTube, all I can find is one where it's like cut off the last minute of the song. And I can't find the full song anyway. But there's other songs throughout the movie, and it also ends with a rendition of Beautiful Dreamer, which is a song that has like 1 million different versions. But that version of it, I enjoyed the way it ended with that song as well. So the music to the movie definitely is a strong part of my enjoyment. They're not necessarily songs that I would listen to in my own time just by myself, but
you would listen to Rockabye Baby.
Yeah, but no, that's just an area that, like I said, every time I watch this movie, it gets a little bit better. No, I wouldn't say overall I think it's a good movie, but yeah, every time I watch it, I enjoy it a little more, and the music is a strong part of that, because when I first watched a movie, I don't think I even sniffed at the soundtrack. Like I didn't really pick up on anything or take anything from that out of my experience, whereas now I do.
I think it's so funny because from what I heard, the soundtrack was pretty horrible. Like, one of the songs is okay, I think, and I'm not sure if it's the one you're talking about or not. It may very well be. But otherwise, I couldn't stand like any of the music, and the fact that also I couldn't stand any of the characters or any of the dialogue or anything. It all combined to make a difficult time. I think a big issue, for me, I mean, taking away the I think a lot of this movie's bad, but taking away that, getting to a wider issue is my my views on comedy horror. Or horror comedies. When horror comedies go like over the top, I have a really difficult time with those movies. And some of them are like close calls. Like, there are parts of like Shaun of the Dead that I don't care for because I think, hey, that's like a bit much. It's like it's way too comedy for me. And even like some classics like Return of the Living Dead. It's a movie I generally enjoy a lot, but there's a few scenes that are just a bit much. And then there are movies, like go way overboard, like a movie that we reviewed titled Nightmare Sisters. And there were aspects of even Monster Man from 2003, which we also reviewed, that just went a bit over the top, and I'm mainly talking about the conclusion of that one. But this movie, it was nothing but over the top, like, stupid comedy dialogue. So that's allowed to picture. That's probably one of my biggest issues with this movie, that the type of comedy here, like the dummy, oh hey, you have great tits, and oh why thank you, that's so nice, like it happened like 3 times throughout the movie, like
come on, that's funny.
I might have grinned the first time, but I mean it's not my type of thing. So that's probably a bigger issue. It's just this type of comedy horror isn't really my, I guess, forte.
Okay. See, now I'm laughing. I'm
happy that I was able to provide some entertainment.
I don't mind, silly dumb movies like this. It's that's kind of what it is. I mean, it's just kind of off the walls, and I guess one other thing that I should mention is the brother character, who I don't know if he. I actually didn't watch it like just before this show, so it's been months since I actually watched it, but he kind of bumbles around the screen like I always referred to him as being Justin Long with a severe case of autism. Like he just kind of bounces around the screen, like just I don't know what the hell he's doing, but yeah, I can't get that image of Justin Long with severe autism out of my head.
If Justin Long is listening, we apologize.
Yeah, and in fact, if he wants to defend himself, he can get on this show and fucking defend himself. And until he does that, he's going to be known as that guy from Triloquist. Anywho's, as I was saying, it's a movie that's really grown on me over time. I still don't think overall it's a great movie, but it's a movie that I have plenty of fun with. Just a lot of small different things that I pull out of it, and from its, like that scene that you said earlier, hey, I like your tits, and then to some of the music, and it's such a weird movie. I guess one thing you could say about it, there's not too many other movies exactly like this one. I mean, there's other movies that you could say possibly a little similar, but nothing exactly similar to this. So to me, it stands out as a little unique as well. And whether that's intentional or they were just trying to make such a stupid, silly movie that it ended up being that way, I don't know. But anywho, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. I enjoy it.
Yeah, this is a movie, like I said, I had a difficult time with. It's not a movie I can ever see myself watching again if I'm sober. And maybe that was part of the problem. Maybe the movie would be okay in a party type environment. It's quite possible. I just know I had a pretty negative time at this. And I saw almost no redeeming factors. So I would give this a 0 out of 10. And
what the fuck?
And I have I've never had this issue before. But if I need to, I will round up to a 1 out of 10 to help you out. But my base rating is a 0 out of 10, and that's a thoroughly unenjoyable experience.
You made the comparison earlier about Cedar Chucky, and that's kind of funny because I also give Cedar Chucky a 7 out of 10, and I do kind of see some similarities between the movie, even though they're certainly not the same.
See, my thing is, I think Seed of Chucky It was a bad movie, and I forget why I forget what rating I gave it. I know it's
You
like
gave it a 2 out of 10.
yeah. So but the thing about that movie is at least Chucky was there. At least we got something. But this movie we have nothing. So
Well, what about the boy who gets his arm butchered off?
yeah,
You didn't enjoy it?
that no, not so much.
Never had your dick sucked by a ventriloquist?
Yeah, that scene. No. I was actually I was sort of hoping during the trip auditioning for in this trip club. I was sort of thinking that maybe she would come out with the dummy and strip. I thought that's where it was going. But obviously that's not where it goes. But she didn't strike me as a particularly modest individual, so I don't see why she didn't. But I might have given the movie like a 1 out of 10 if she did. On a side note, but yeah. See that, and then that scene that follows it that you just referenced. That I mean, I appreciate. Well, I in theory appreciate it, but it didn't do anything for me. So.
Okay, well, if it had a doll puppet stripping on stage, you would have given it a better score.
That's not quite what I said, but I am okay with that.
Okay.
Lastly, we have Friday the 13th Part 2. And if you are familiar with the Friday the 13th series, this is the first movie in which Jason is the killer, only he's wearing like a bag over his head, as opposed to his famous hockey mask, which doesn't show up until movie 3. In this movie, it pretty much follows the first one. There's a camp that's on the same lake as Camp Crystal Lake. They're trying to get ready for the summer. There's people coming in for like counselor training, and as it so happens, Jason is nearby and he sees some counselors and he just goes angry and just attacks them. As just typical of Friday the 13th movies, which isn't to say there's not like things in this movie to enjoy. I mean, I really like the first movie, and the second movie I think also has like a lot of interesting characters. I mean, there's not that many slasher movies that have a character in a wheelchair, for instance, and I know it's small things, but there's a lot of like characters in this movie I thought were interesting and I appreciated. Like the one redhead guy, I forget what his name was. And that guy actually has sort of an interesting story arc too, which is sort of unusual for a Friday the 13th movie. I know it's a movie I've seen so many times. I've seen many of the Friday the 13th movies multiple times. I can't even remember when I first saw this. Probably when I was a kid at some point. But there's a lot of, in my opinion, great kills. In fact, there's only one that I thought was particularly unsatisfactory, and I think the ending was decently clever. But before I keep fawning on about this movie, and I will, what were your thoughts on this one?
Well, to start off with, I wouldn't say the movie has great kills. I think it has okay kills. There's nothing in this movie that I would be like, I gotta go back and watch that kill again. But, with that being said, there's also not really... I mean, most of the kills are fine in the movie, so if you're watching
I think the upside down thought slitting is pretty decent, but to each his own.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just watching it for the slasher aspect of it, I'm sure you're going to have a decent time with it. It certainly does okay in that area. Just a quick recap of what I thought of the original. So I had some problems with the original and how a lot of the kills are like first-person view, and it wasn't necessarily who was doing the kills that was the problem. I just didn't really enjoy that.
Oh, it's you.
Yeah. Oh, it's you. So I didn't necessarily have a problem with the identity or what they're trying to do there, but I feel the style of that movie is just... I hate playing first-person view video games, and now I'm watching a movie with first-person kills, and I think it's an okay effect if you're doing it like as a once-off. Like, you can see it in Halloween. At the start of Halloween, they have that same effect. But in Friday the 13th, they pretty much use that effect throughout most of the movie, and it's toned down a lot here, I guess, but... Still, a thing about this is that Like, I don't mind the beginning scene to this movie, but at the same time, if you go back and watch it again after having watched all the sequels, it doesn't really make sense. Like, it doesn't feel like something Jason would do. Like, I don't know where that location is, but it's not near the camp, is it?
No, I would say I agree completely with you, and it doesn't change my view whatsoever.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't really affect too much my enjoyment of the movie, but at the same time, it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. It feels, and yeah, from my understanding, I think they actually filmed that after the rest of the movie was made, so they had the actors come back just to do the scene, and it feels pretty atypical of pretty much anything else you see. Which is somewhat interesting because Jason in this movie actually feels a lot different than most other Jasons, but I'm going to touch on that a little later.
I guess you can't really blame it because, I mean, the sequels came later, so the sequels really retroactively affected this one, I guess. But with that being said, you know, this movie's it's decent. It's still one of my lesser liked Friday the 13th movies, and partially that's because I think Jason just works a lot better as a hockey mask killer than, you know, a guy with a bag on his head. Even though I don't mind the bag head look myself, like I think it's fine, and the scenes towards the end of the movie where you see him a lot more, they're enjoyable. But yeah, clearly, you know, it's not his best screen presence that you can see in any of his movies. So,
well, I think on one note, Jason here feels a lot more human than he does in other movies. I mean, this scene, I don't know if it's meant to be funny, but I always found it funny. The scene where he's about to kill that woman and the chair he's standing on breaks. I thought that was, I was sort of amusing. I mean, he gets knocked down a few times in this movie. It's nothing as over the top as you might see in Scream, but I mean, he definitely, and you see him running too, so he feels a lot more human here than he does in almost any other Friday the 13th movie, and I sort of appreciated the, I guess the more human aspect of him, as opposed to like ultra zombie Jason who could never be harmed.
Yeah, I still prefer that over this, but yeah. I mean, there's a couple of decent things in the movie that I do enjoy, though. Like the whole keeping of the severed head thing. I really enjoyed that, having that kind of like shrine.
Yeah, I actually thought the whole idea of I forget what the main Gras character's name is. I'm trying to find it quickly, but it's not coming to me. Ginny, played by Amy Steele. I thought she was a really really interesting character because she has a whole focus in child psychology, which is pretty unique in that she sort of knows how to maybe manipulate Jason in ways that other characters wouldn't, and you sort of see that toward the end of the movie. And she's definitely one of those characters where I think she much like Nancy from Nightmare on Elm Street, I think she really does a good job fighting against what she is unexpectedly poured into.
That one guy decided to stay at the bar. I mean, what a boss move. I mean,
I know.
You want to survive a movie, that's how you do it. Just stay and get drunk.
Yeah, which is, again, interesting because they introduce him and you just expect that character to meet a somewhat, grisly end, and nothing happens. He doesn't pop up at the end or anything, which, I don't know, I think that's not something I've seen that many times. I'm sure it's happened, before, and I'm sure it's happened again, but I can't think of any exact examples. So I sort of liked that. Just another small thing. The wheelchair guy I thought was interesting. I sort of liked, we didn't see much of him, but we saw enough of him to make him a character that I wish we saw more of, if that makes sense. And the girl he was hanging with, her character name was Vicky, actress name was Lauren Marie Taylor. She was, probably would make my top 5 list of most attractive Friday the 13th girls. He was a pretty attractive individual. Plus, the one with the pug, her dialogue was beautiful. So.
The thing about that is, even though I agree with that, she was one of the more attractive girls in the movie, and she was clearly flirting with this guy, like the whole time. And I'm just like watching this. I'm like, just fuck already. You know?
I felt so bad for that guy, to be honest. Like, not only is he momentarily in the wheelchair, he has this decently attractive chick hitting on him, and he's about to finally potentially seal the deal, and then boom, something happens to him. So.
And while we're talking about the guys and girls getting together, that one guy towards the beginning of the movie who like slingshots a girl's ass, what a creepy looking motherfucker. He just like peers out and like shows his little slingshot like, it was me.
Yeah, that was one of my least favorite couples in the movie. I mean, they were really a couple, to be fair, but I feel like she was sort of flirting with him at times, but maybe I was misreading the situation, but I did care for that guy. So. he reminded me sort of as like one of those greases that you might see in a 50s movie. I don't know, that guy didn't do much for me.
He had a bit of a rapey look on his face in that first scene.
That is true too. But then again, you can understand why if there's just especially late in the movie when the individual is bathing nude, which is I think the only female who gets naked in this movie. But I mean, and that's always okay. I didn't have anything against it. I just didn't find that woman particularly interesting.
Probably my favorite character in the movie is the dog.
Marvin was it, I think?
I don't know the name, but I just enjoy. I like how it pops up at the end there, you know.
Speaking of which, the ending, it's not really psychedelic, but it's definitely a more sort of a dreamy type ending than than you might expect. Which, you know, I guess given the first movie might make sense, but I sort of like the sort of ambiguous ending. There's a character that we don't really know what happens, you know, to this individual, and then, you know, the movie ends with camera closing up on the face of the, you know, decapitated head of the Mardi. And on a side note, I am so happy that face didn't wink or smile or anything, because I mean, I think that's what they were originally going to do in the movie, but they thought it looked way too hokey. It just looked terrible, so they changed it, and I'm so happy they did. And I say this every time we talk about a slasher movie, but I'm a big slasher fan. And some of these classics, like, you know, the Halloween movies, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, I've seen so many of these so many times, and I can't even begin to guess how many times I've seen this one. But I would assume at least 8-9 times. You know, I think it's better than the first movie. I think the first movie is really good, and I think this is just a bit better. And I don't think it's the best one in the series. And I don't even think the Friday the 13th series is even like a over the top amazing series to begin with. So I just have a lot of respect for this. I'm a sucker for the whole like final battle during a rainstorm and finding bodies, and I just enjoy the hell out of it. So I'm going to give this an 8.5. And I will probably round it down to an 8 out of 10. But it's still a movie I really enjoy. And I would never pass it up.
You better round that shit down. No, I give it a 7. And, I mean, with our rating scales, it's not too far away from yours. It's certainly a little lower. But I think it's a better movie than the original movie. For a number of different reasons, which I think we've mostly touched on. You know, I think Jason works better, you know, as the bad guy in this movie than what we get in the original, and I think the characters overall are a little more enjoyable in this one than in the original movie as well. And it clearly has better kills as well. Not that I would say they're fantastic, anything that I would, you know, have to go back and watch on YouTube or anything like that, but enjoyable enough throughout the movie to fulfill your slasher urges or whatever you're trying to get out of a slasher movie in terms of kills. So
I do wish that this movie had another game as Strip Monopoly.
Maybe that would have finally got those two in the sack.